so much for joining us for another edition of All Angles. I'm Dion Jackson Miller. A special program for you tonight. We're talking about legal reform against the background of a case that TVJ brought to national attention. The story of a man sentenced to 12 years in prison, trying to appeal his sentence and whose appeal fell through a crack in the justice system, resulting in him serving almost his entire sentence before being released after TVJ brought the story to the country. So our angles for you today, we're going to be hearing from the Justice Minister, Delroy Chuck. We'll be hearing from the Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of National Security, Senator Matthew Samuda, and we'll hear from his attorney, Terrence Williams. But first, let's go to Giovanni Dennis, who has this exclusive interview with Raymond Morgan.
Raymond Morgan has been a free man for 5 days, but he was imprisoned for nearly 12 years since July 2009, convicted in 2011 on 4 counts of fraud. His efforts to file an appeal were frustrated as the documents were filed in the wrong court, and neither the Court of Appeal nor the Resident Magistrates Court did anything to help him. Mr. Morgan ended up serving nearly the entire 12 years and was still in prison when he went to Attorney John Clark with his case. Mr. Clark now represents him, along with Queen's Counsel Terrence Williams. His story came to light after a TVJ report highlighted systemic glitches between the courts and the Department of Corrections. Those glitches we now want to explore. He's asked us not to show his face on camera. What was your reaction when you actually heard the sentence that it was 12 years, 4 3-year sentences to be served?
I thought at the moment the judge might have had a slip of the lips, you know. I thought that she meant concurrently and those were consecutively, you know.
The sentence shocked him. He was also troubled by some elements of the trial. So he filed an appeal 5 days after his sentence.
It has to do with the remarks that the judge made, you know, and that is also written in the appeal.
Do you mind sharing those remarks?
Well, she said that I should not see the light of day and key should be thrown away, you know.
How did you feel at that?
Well, it was unbecoming for a judge to be telling me that, you know. And I told her that I'm giving my verbal notice of appeal, and she said I can do whatever I want to do.
So he did. He gave his appeal papers to officers from the Department of Correctional Services on February 11, 2011. But the president of the Court of Appeal, Justice Patrick Brooks, in describing what happened next, said matters took a turn that is hoped will not be repeated in this jurisdiction. The papers should have been filed in the Resident Magistrates Court, but were filed in the Court of Appeal. Again, in the words of the President, the Court of Appeal did nothing until February 2012, when it sent the form to the Senior Resident Magistrate for the corporate area. But nothing was done by the Resident Magistrates Court, which neither replied nor informed Mr. Morgan of its stance. At what point, you know, when you had filed the appeal, no response, did you realize that something had gone wrong?
Well, after I saw 4 years, 3 years and 8 months, I started asking what is happening. They asked me, even at the initial stage of when I filed the appeal, they asked me if I wanted, if I could afford a lawyer. I said no. They said, do you want a legal aid? And I said yes, and I signed the paper for legal aid, and all that wasn't even honored.
You reached out to different people over the years asking for help as well. Tell me about that.
I went to the public defender, and the public defender said, well, we must go to Supreme Court. I reached out to JFJ, I reached out to, I've lost count. I've lost count.
And as the years went by, you were getting nowhere. How were you feeling as the years were going by, you know, trying these different avenues with no success?
The road was very long and winding. It was such a hard road. I kept my faith, in the Almighty. And there's this song, Something Inside So Strong. And that in itself summed up the whole thing, I knew that I couldn't give up.
Something inside so strong. I know that I can make it.
But there was another difficulty, a cancer diagnosis in 2017.
I couldn't give up. Despite I having prostate cancer and all of that and everything, and
what was that like when you were diagnosed in 2017, being given that news, being uncertain, what was happening with their appeal, seemingly running up into so many roadblocks, and then now to be diagnosed, as you'd mentioned, now with cancer?
Well, as I say, the road was very long and winding, and there were moments when I thought of giving up, but that song, Something Inside So Strong, I held on to it.
He found, even in prison, support from unexpected quarters.
There are some good correctional officers too. I can make mention of that, And even when I was diagnosed, the officer was there, and the doctor said, "Who is Morgan?" And I said, "I'm Morgan." So he said, "Oh, the officer looks at the spanning and you look like all is well." I said, "Well, I was prepared for it, And the other officer who worked at the hospital post, he encouraged me a lot.
At one point, Mr. Morgan says he was being urged to give up his appeal.
They gave me a paper to sign that I can abandon the appeal, and then the registrar or something like the court would give me grant me the release to go home. I even have that paper with me right here.
Who had given that to you?
The authority.
Through the years, Mr. Morgan had a relative who was reaching out to different organizations and agencies, trying to find someone to help with his appeal. Finally, she called TVJ, and we connected Mr. Morgan with attorney John Clark.
My relative, after going to so many places and wasn't getting through, and I told her to go to TVJ. I don't think everybody's going to feel me. And she have been there like maybe 3 times, and they responded eventually. And then John Clark came on board. John Clark was the only one then that I saw a glimmer of hope. I saw a glimmer of hope. The man is very passionate about what he do, and very astute lawyer. And I'm lost for adjective to describe the man. Suitable adjective that is. And I think, and I'm not saying this because I am now interviewed by you people, but I think TVJ did much, much more than the justice system for me.
You've said that the justice system needs reform. Those were your last words to me when I spoke to you last Friday. What about the justice system?
The justice system, I think there are people there who they are just, I think they are just there to collect a salary come the 25th of the month. And I'm not saying everybody.
But his growing frustration over the years had perhaps an inevitable impact.
At one time, I was very, very bitter at the system. Bitter to the point that I said to myself, if I should ever release and I see a crime being commissioned, I would turn a blind eye. And if I could assist, I wouldn't assist, because I wouldn't want the person to go through anything like what I've been through. I said to myself that if the people who are there to protect us and they are behaving like this, worse than a criminal, then what the heck, you know what I mean? It's better, it's easier for me to say, well, boy, I can bargain with the man who's doing the wrongs than the man who's there to impart justice. Because that man would have said, well, all right, do this or whatever, and we can ease up on you. But the system press you out.
That's how you felt?
Yeah. And I think it breeds crime even more than it would stop it or eliminate it.
How so?
I look on, if I was charged for murder, plea guilty to manslaughter, I would have been out already. Because that would be a plea bargain, right? And I've seen people who have done more heinous crime than I have done, which is a crime. It's a crime, despite it being white collar, whatever color crime. It's a crime. But a heinous crime such as a man, even a pastor who from St. Elizabeth there, the man is due for parole. I mean, now. The man come there and see me and leaving me. This is what I'm saying. So I think the whole thing is just packed in a barrel and it doesn't really matter. So I'm saying that at one time I was echoing that if I charge for murder / manslaughter, which is a lesser charge, I would have been out already.
A lot of people have said that, look, you know, why are we making this a big deal? The man convicted, him a criminal, they defraud people and stuff like that. What do you say to people who say that?
I guess they're entitled to their own opinion. I think when it reaches to their doorstep, they will say otherwise. It's easy for them to stay over the fence and shoot their shot at me, you know, but I am saying that I pay the price, more than the price. So it goes back to show you that society don't exercise any mercy either. And they exercise mercy if the man was of a certain status in society.
And he's skeptical of talk about justice reform, including the wish by the President of the Court of Appeal that what happened to him is never repeated.
I can't say if it will be repeated or not, but I've heard similar sentiments before. And here I am again, you know. Here we are again with a similar matter.
When did you hear something like this before?
I remember Shaky, that was one who broke a glass some time ago and he was in there, Noel Chambers. I've heard it like 3 to 4 times before. Yeah, you can check the records.
But still a glimmer of hope. You have any faith that something will change coming out of your case now?
Yes, the President of the Court of Appeal, that's Mr. Patrick Brooks, for him to come out and really say this, regardless of his colleagues being involved in it, you know, after handing me such a harsh sentence. He stated that the appeal process has failed me, DCS, the lower court, and for somebody to be of the system and speak that way, it gives me confidence, yeah.
You're now a free man. Firstly, how do you feel about that? Just being able to be still?
I was discombobulated at one point. I just couldn't even function. I just went and paused for a while, you know. I was like, where am I, you know? I was looking around and I was at a loss, you know. I just couldn't believe it, you know. I must say that when I prayed my first prayer, I know RJR was on the top of the list, you know. It was like, I actually equated with the Creator. It was like having the Creator on the pedestal and RJR was up there with him. You know, I was there and said, RJR, you really do it? You know, when the justice system should have. You know, that was my prayer, you know, me thank you, RJR. And the lawyer. The lawyers, rather.
And here we are now. How do you feel about them, by the way, the lawyers?
Oh, gosh, man. I take off my hand to them a million times, as I've done to RJR.
And now he plans to add his voice to those advocating to improve the justice system. The judge himself said, this is the president of the appeal court, Justice Patrick Brooks. He said Mr. Morgan's case is another instance where the justice system has failed a person in conflict with the law. Your reaction to this from the president of the appeal court?
He's speaking the truth. And I'm not the only one. There are several others left back there. If they don't fix it now, and I'm saying that, I'm going to be an advocate, and I'm going to take my advocacy overseas, you know, on a broader level, scale, because the EU, the USAID, they are giving them money, and these people are still not, it is not doing what it's supposed to do. You know, and I'm going to ask, these are people I'm going to direct my question to, you know, not the locals, you know. With all these things that are happening, you people are still giving them money?
So you're taking this international?
Yeah.
What exactly do you plan to do?
Well, Amnesty International has contacted me since.